You dedicate a lifetime to being concerned about others' opinions, about your own adequacy, about whether you are performing sufficiently, existing sufficiently, evolving sufficiently. A quiet voice often murmurs, "You ought to be more advanced by this point. You ought to appear more youthful. You ought to have comprehended everything." And for numerous decades, a significant number of us pursue these expectations, frequently without pausing to question who established them initially. But imagine if I informed you that upon reaching the age of 70, a transformation occurs? Not due to a cessation of caring, but because you commence caring more profoundly about the pertinent matters. You start to perceive that a great deal of what previously consumed your time, your tranquility, and your happiness never genuinely held any importance. This phase of existence is not centered on surrender. It is centered on awakening. Awakening to your authentic voice. Awakening to what truly provides you with solace, purpose, and liberation. In this presentation, we will discuss 7 items that simply forfeit their influence after the age of 70. These encompass the anxieties, the strains, the imperceptible burdens that many of us bear for an excessive duration. Yet, here is the reality: relinquishing them does not signify weakness or apathy. It signifies that you are ultimately creating space for what is paramount: serenity, more profound connections, a sense of direction and ease. Thus, if you have ever felt as though you are still endeavoring to meet expectations that no longer align with you, or if you are merely beginning to contemplate what genuinely merits your energy in this chapter of life, you have arrived at the correct destination. This message is intended for you, and I trust it will offer not only understanding but also comfort. Let us commence. 1. Sorrow over bygones. There is an element that is subtle yet burdensome about sorrow. It does not clamor. It does not seek notice. It merely persists, akin to a shadow you failed to observe until the sun starts to descend. Nearly everyone bears some variant of it. A choice they wish they had executed differently, an opportunity they refrained from seizing, a remark uttered too hastily, or not articulated at all. And for years, perhaps even extensive periods, those recollections replay. You revisit them in the stillness of the night. You ponder, what if I had approached matters in an alternative manner? However, a change starts to materialize after 70. You begin to view the past with a more lenient perspective. You start to comprehend that sorrow is not an indicator of deficiency. It is an indicator that you were endeavoring, that you were maturing, that you were a human being. Consider Michael, for instance. He is 83 at present. Yet, for many years, he harbored sorrow regarding a career opportunity he declined in his 40s. It would have offered greater remuneration, unlocked pathways, but it would have necessitated relocating a significant distance from his relatives. He frequently questioned himself, did I proceed with excessive caution? Now, residing in the identical dwelling where he brought up his offspring, where he instructed his grandchild on bicycle riding, Michael states, that determination afforded me time. And ultimately, that was what held the utmost significance. You see, sorrow loses its dominance when we interpret it through the prism of affection, not condemnation. The younger iteration of yourself, the one who made that particular selection or error or misjudgment, was performing to the best of their ability with the knowledge they possessed at that juncture. They lacked the background, the lucidity, or the emotional resources you possess today. But they were striving, and they brought you to this point. So instead of inquiring, what should I have undertaken? You begin to ask, what insights did I gain? Instead of castigating yourself, you extend empathy. Instead of clinging to disgrace, you hold on to the sagacity those instances imparted. Releasing sorrow does not imply feigning its non-existence. It implies you no longer permit it to characterize you. You allow it to shape your decisions, but you do not allow it to mar your tranquility. Every dawn you experience is a new leaf, an occasion to exist fully, even with the past in your wake. Particularly with the past in your wake, because what is important now is not what might have transpired, but what can still materialize. 2. The compulsion to hasten and adhere to a schedule. From the moment we, as youngsters, were presented with an unseen timetable, a sequence of events we are conditioned to believe we must follow. Complete education by a specific age, embark on a profession, enter matrimony, acquire property, raise children, retire at the opportune moment, discover your calling, accomplish everything, and do so rapidly. And if you fail to achieve these benchmarks punctually, society has a means of inducing a feeling of being tardy, as if you squandered your opportunity, as if you somehow fell short. But here lies the reality that only becomes evident with advancing years. That timetable was never genuine. There is no common chronometer. There is no ultimate cutoff for affection, for development, for recuperation, or for happiness. After 70, the competition decelerates. And for the inaugural occasion, you start to perceive just how superfluous the haste truly was. You begin to grasp that living life according to someone else's schedule merely diverts you from unearthing your own cadence. Consider David. At 82, he commenced piano instruction, not due to a desire to perform or astonish anyone, but because the melody of the keys had consistently beckoned him. For years, he convinced himself he was excessively occupied. Then, he persuaded himself he was too advanced in age. But one day, he posed a different query to himself. What if it is not excessively late? What if this is precisely the appropriate moment? Now every morning, David situates himself at the piano with tremulous hands and unwavering delight. He is unconcerned if his playing is flawless. He is not pursuing a concert appearance. He is pursuing an emotion, a link to something that is meaningful to him and solely to him, and that encapsulates the allure of abandoning the rush. You cease living to complete checklists. You commence living to experience vitality. The truth is, some of the most significant portions of your life may not have even been composed yet. There remains capacity for fresh starts, not because you are attempting to regain lost ground, but because your essence is still inquisitive, still receptive, still maturing. So the subsequent time you discern that voice asserting, "You should have accomplished this by now," recall, you are not lagging. You are precisely where you are intended to be. You have not forfeited your chance. You are merely embarking on your own conditions, in your own time frame. 3. Adhering to fads and striving for conformity. There exists an imperceptible coercion within our societal structure, one that never truly diminishes, irrespective of our age. It murmurs, maintain pace, remain pertinent, do not lag. It manifests in the attire we select, the mobile devices we utilize, the contemporary expressions we fail to comprehend, the applications ubiquitously employed. The unspoken notion is this: if you are not aligning with current trends, you are being relegated. But after 70, a transformation starts to occur. You begin to perceive these fads for their true nature: diversions, incessant motion that frequently leads to no particular destination. You cease inquiring, "What is novel?" and commence asking, "What resonates as true for me?" That is when the compulsion to conform begins to wane, and genuine tranquility starts to flourish. Consider Sarah. She is 76 at present. For years, she endeavored to keep pace, purchasing the newest footwear her daughter suggested, downloading applications she never even utilized, listening to music she found unenjoyable, merely to feel as though she were not falling behind. But one day, she inspected her wardrobe and acknowledged, "None of this reflects my identity." She yearned for her comfortable floral garments. She yearned for perusing tangible books, the kind you can physically hold, and whose aroma you can appreciate as you flip the pages. She yearned for music that narrated tales, not just generated sound. So, she granted herself authorization to revert to what she cherished. She relinquished the necessity to be contemporary and embraced what instilled in her a sense of being grounded, interconnected, and authentic. Now, she navigates her days with a serene self-assurance, not because she is current with the times, but because she is in harmony with herself. And that is an attribute no fad can provide. Here is what you come to understand after 70. Most fads are conceived to make you feel as though you are lacking something, so that you will procure something, pursue something, or alter something. But in reality, you are not deficient in any aspect. You have already traversed cycles of style, technological advancements, and lifestyle crazes that emerged and vanished, only to resurface with a different designation. You have witnessed enough to recognize that new does not invariably equate to superior, and old does not signify outmoded. Occasionally, it signifies ageless. There is a quiet grace in selecting what genuinely befits you, rather than what is momentarily fashionable. And this principle extends beyond mere clothing or technological devices. It pertains to how you allocate your time, what commands your focus, how you navigate the world, how you present yourself. You do not need to compel yourself to use the latest mobile phone if your current one functions perfectly adequately. You do not need to don uncomfortable attire merely because someone declared it fashionable. You do not need to participate in every fad simply to demonstrate your continued relevance. Your intrinsic value is not determined by your capacity to keep pace. It is determined by your capacity to be present for yourself, for the individuals who are significant, and for the existence you have meticulously constructed. So instead of inquiring, "Am I still contemporary?" ask, "Am I still connected to what is meaningful to me?" Instead of stating, "I do not wish to appear antiquated," attempt saying, "I wish to feel at ease in my own being." You do not need to substantiate anything to anyone. Not any longer. Not after everything you have undergone, tolerated, and brought into existence. Wear what feels pleasant on your physique. Utilize what feels intuitive in your grasp. Attend to the music that resonates with your spirit, not your social standing. Cultivate a dwelling that mirrors your recollections and your serenity, not a portrayal from a periodical. Because the objective is not to be fashionable. The objective is to be at peace. You have merited the prerogative to live with comfort, lucidity, and contentment, and that will perpetually remain in vogue. For resentments and past wounds, there is a particular encumbrance that does not manifest on your shoulders, yet you experience it nonetheless. It resides within your chest, in the recesses of your mind, in the tranquil interludes when you contemplate an individual who inflicted pain upon you, or someone you pained. The utterances that were never articulated, the telephone conversations that were never initiated, the quietude that extended into years. That encumbrance is animosity, and it can persist far longer than we ever anticipate. For a significant portion of existence, harboring a resentment can feel like a display of fortitude, like a protective barrier. We tell ourselves, "If I maintain my anger, I am safeguarding myself. If I withhold forgiveness, they cannot inflict pain upon me again." And perhaps for a period, that seemed accurate. But after 70, a transformation occurs. That anger begins to feel burdensome. The quietude does not feel secure, it feels desolate. And you begin to question yourself, what is this resentment costing me? Because here lies the truth. Regardless of the profundity of the wound, carrying it does not alleviate the suffering. It merely occupies space that could be occupied by serenity, or rapprochement, or recuperation. Consider Emily. She is 79 at present. She had not communicated with her younger sibling for over 2 decades. A contention regarding their parents' inheritance escalated into acrimony, then evasion, then years of festive meals spent at opposing ends of the chamber. But the previous year, following a brief period of hospitalization that reminded Emily of life's inherent fragility, she composed a concise letter. It merely stated, "I miss your presence. I no longer wish to bear this." Her sibling telephoned a week thereafter. They did not re-examine the disagreement. They did not even discuss bygone events. They simply conversed about their grandchildren, their horticultural pursuits, and the minor delights of daily existence. It was not flawless, but it was adequate to temper the harshness. And that was all Emily required. Relinquishing a resentment does not imply feigning that nothing transpired. It does not imply condoning the harm or diminishing your suffering. It implies prioritizing your tranquility over your self-esteem. It implies declaring, "I do not wish for this wound to dictate the ultimate chapter of my narrative." And at times, forgiveness does not even necessitate a reconciliation. At times, it is a tranquil, solitary moment where you inhale deeply, shut your eyes, and articulate, "I release you. I release this. I desire to be liberated." That is the boon of aging. You begin to perceive the extensive duration you have already devoted to carrying burdens that no longer benefit you. And you acknowledge that serenity is not something you discover, it is something you permit. Forgiveness is not frailty, it is fortitude, a distinct category of fortitude, one that does not require triumph, one that is not seeking retribution or vengeance, merely release. When you ultimately relinquish a resentment, you create capacity for something more buoyant, more meaningful, more human. You create space for empathy, for sagacity, for the gentle variety of affection that does not need to be vociferous to be genuine. You create space for happiness. And that happiness merits more room in your existence than any long-standing acrimony ever did. So ask yourself, is there someone you are still carrying? Someone who occupies space in your heart, not due to affection, but due to the suffering they bequeathed? If so, perhaps today is the day you declare, I am finished carrying this. Not for them, for yourself. 5. The views of other individuals. There was a period when the perceptions others held of you could influence your entire day, or even your entire existence. Perhaps it concerned your attire, the nature of your occupation, the dwelling you inhabited, the vehicle you operated, the manner in which you reared your offspring, the way you matured. We reside in a society that instructs us to seek external endorsement. We are conditioned from an early age to strive for accolades, advancements, commendations, and approval. This does not cease in immaturity. It frequently persists covertly into our 60s, 70s, and further. But ultimately and gracefully, a juncture arrives where something alters. After 70, numerous individuals begin to acknowledge that most views do not genuinely hold importance. Not because you have ceased caring entirely, but because you finally comprehend your own identity. And once you genuinely understand yourself, the surrounding clamor begins to subside. Olivia is an ideal illustration. She is 74 at present. For the majority of her life, she paused before undertaking anything that felt excessively unconventional. She fretted about what her neighbors might remark regarding her vibrant garden. She reconsidered her choices before acquiring garments that felt overly flamboyant or audacious. She cherished painting but never exhibited her creations to anyone, apprehensive they would deem them inadequate. One morning, while observing avian creatures from her kitchen casement, she queried herself, why does anyone else's opinion matter? She could not procure a satisfactory response. So she purchased that turquoise attire. She cultivated wildflowers of every hue. She enrolled in a community art exhibition and displayed her imperfect, joyous paintings for the inaugural occasion. Consequently, she smiles more frequently now than she ever did in her 50s, not because everyone admires her actions, but because she herself does. Relinquishing the views of other individuals does not equate to becoming callous or discourteous. It simply signifies that your internal voice ultimately assumes precedence over external critique. It signifies comprehending that people will invariably have remarks to make, and they will forget their pronouncements as swiftly as they articulated them. What genuinely holds significance is your sentiment regarding your choices, the existence you are leading, the manner in which you interact with others, the manner in which you treat yourself. After 70, you begin to perceive that pursuing endorsement is a competition devoid of a finish line. Even upon triumph, it lacks permanence. It fails to nourish your spirit. It does not foster serenity. So instead, you become more discerning. You select whose voices merit attention. You encompass yourself with individuals who cherish you authentically, not for your accomplishments, your appearance, or your possessions. And even then, you recall that you possess every prerogative to make determinations that bolster your well-being, your contentment, and your peace of mind, irrespective of others' views. There is a quiet potency in entering a chamber and not speculating about anyone's perception of you. It is not haughtiness, it is sagacity, the kind of self-reliance that only materializes with the passage of time. You have lived sufficiently long to recognize that you cannot gratify everyone, and endeavoring to do so merely culminates in vexation and self-neglect. So relinquish that necessity. Relinquish the apprehension that someone will disapprove, because their endorsement does not settle your obligations. It does not alleviate your suffering. It does not render your existence any more your own. At this phase in life, you do not require authorization to be yourself. You merely require the fortitude to remain authentic, even when others fail to comprehend. And when you finally cease living for the plaudits, that is when you discern something even more favorable: your own voice, your own happiness, your own tranquil, unwavering, unreserved peace. 6. Juxtaposing yourself with others. It commences at a tender age, almost imperceptibly. In educational settings, we juxtapose academic achievements. At celebratory gatherings for birthdays, we juxtapose presents. As adolescents, we juxtapose appearances, attire, companions, and at some juncture, it evolves into a customary practice, something we bear with us unobtrusively into maturity. Who possesses the more elegant dwelling? Whose progeny achieved greater success? Who entered retirement at an earlier stage? Who journeyed more extensively? Who appears more youthful for their age? Even when we possess superior judgment, juxtaposition has a tendency to insinuate itself, particularly in the contemporary era where everyone's existence is prominently displayed. Photographs, declarations, beaming countenances, flawless instances captured and disseminated. And as we peruse these depictions or learn of someone's recent accomplishment, it is facile to feel as though we are not performing adequately, or have not performed adequately. But after 70, numerous individuals begin to perceive it from a different vantage point. Not because their lives attain flawlessness, but because they finally recognize the fallacy for what it represented. Sophia, 75, is intimately familiar with this sentiment. She formerly browsed social networking platforms and experienced a subtle pang. Acquaintances commemorating anniversaries, embarking on voyages, encircled by grandchildren, beaming in coordinated attire. And there she was, residing solitarily, no significant excursions, no companion, no elaborate familial congregations. For a period, she mused, perhaps I did not navigate existence correctly. But then, one afternoon, she ventured outdoors and seated herself in her garden. The atmosphere was tranquil. The roses were in bloom, and her elderly canine rested by her side. A friend telephoned merely to inquire about her well-being. They conversed for nearly an hour, discussing trivialities and significant matters alike. And in that instant, something resonated. She acknowledged that her existence was not deficient in any aspect. It was merely her own serene, meaningful, authentic. Because here lies the truth. What you observe in another individual's life is never the complete narrative. You witness the highlights, not the adversities, not the restless nights, not the bereavements they do not articulate. Everyone bears an unseen burden, and no two lives can be assessed by the same metric, not by monetary wealth, not by marital unions, not by the quantity of photographs on a mantelpiece, or the number of kilometers on a travel document. What holds the utmost significance cannot be quantified at all. After 70, you begin to comprehend that triumph is not about maintaining pace. It is about remaining grounded. It is about awakening and experiencing contentment with the existence you are leading, not perpetually striving for someone else's interpretation of happiness. Juxtaposition pilfers your present. It diverts your attention from the minor, exquisite particulars of your own voyage and distracts you with another's trajectory. And the truth is, you do not need to emulate anyone. You do not need to substantiate anything. You have already traversed decades of narratives, of lessons, of affection and bereavement, and everything in between. You are not lagging. You are not inferior. You are precisely where you are intended to be, bearing your own triumphs, your own suffering, your own sagacity. So when you observe someone else commemorating something splendid, allow it to motivate you without prompting you to scrutinize your own narrative. Celebrate them without devaluing yourself, because your life, just as it is, possesses its own unique allure. It may not invariably be conspicuous or ostentatious, but it is genuine, and that is sufficient. You are not present to be anyone else. You are present to be yourself, completely and faithfully. And once you cease juxtaposing, you begin to notice something astonishing. Your life is already replete with things that matter. You merely need to cease glancing sideways long enough to perceive it. 7. Exerting your physique beyond its capabilities. There is a certain self-esteem many of us bear, the kind that stems from being robust, dependable, the one who accomplishes tasks. For decades, we exert ourselves because we believe that fortitude signifies never soliciting assistance, never decelerating, never exhibiting indications of aging. You tend to the lawn even when your back protests. You transport cumbersome provisions without requesting aid. You ascend staircases swiftly, even if it leaves you breathless. You remain on your feet longer than advisable, merely to demonstrate to yourself, or perhaps others, that you still possess the capability. But after 70, something internal begins to communicate more distinctly. It is your physique, yes, but it is also your sagacity. And collectively, they are articulating something straightforward. It is time to cease exerting. Not because you are frail, but because you have merited the prerogative to navigate life differently now, more delicately, more mindfully, more deferentially. James, now 80, spent years insisting on mowing his own lawn every Saturday. He asserted it was beneficial exercise, that it preserved his youthfulness. But one summer, after experiencing dizziness and nearly losing consciousness in the midday warmth, he found himself at the physician's establishment. And abruptly, matters no longer felt so innocuous. The physician informed him candidly, "Your heart remains robust, but you must heed your body's whispers before it begins to shout." So James undertook something he never envisioned he would do. He engaged a local adolescent to mow the lawn. Initially, it stung. He felt as though he were relinquishing something. But the subsequent Saturday, as he sat on his veranda with a glass of iced beverage, conversing with a young person about baseball while the mower resonated in the distance, he acknowledged something surprising. He had not forfeited anything. In fact, he had acquired something. Peace, presence, and perhaps even a new acquaintance. Here is what so many individuals discover after 70. Fortitude is not about the quantity you can bear. It is about recognizing when to set something down. Your intrinsic value does not derive from how long you can remain standing, or how many tasks you can accomplish in a day. It derives from your character, how you demonstrate care, and how adeptly you listen, not merely to others but to yourself. Repose is not indolence, it is sagacity. Soliciting assistance is not deficiency, it is maturity. Taking respites does not signify surrender. It signifies providing yourself with what you require. That physique of yours, it has accompanied you through everything. It has sustained you through emotional distress, through arduous labor, through festivity and sorrow. It merits your empathy. It merits your solicitude. So extend slowly. Ambulate at your own tempo. Take brief sleeps when your eyelids feel heavy. Utilize the walking stick, the mobility aid, the handrail, not because you are deteriorating, but because you are opting for security and ease. You are not inferior. You are seasoned, experienced, sufficiently wise to recognize that life is no longer a competition. It is not about the velocity at which you proceed. It is about your level of presence while proceeding. You do not need to substantiate anything to anyone, not any longer, not even to yourself. You have already completed the substantiation. You have already constructed the life, reared the family, served the populace, demonstrated to the world your inherent qualities. Now is the occasion to care for your physique in the manner it has cared for you, with gentleness, forbearance, and appreciation. Because genuine fortitude, it is not in the exertion. It is in the authorization to decelerate and still feel complete. Let us take a serene breath in unison. You have just been acquainted with 7 items that no longer need to encumber you after 70. Prevailing pressures, apprehensions, or expectations that may have molded your past, but do not have to mold your future. Perhaps one of them resonated as particularly true for you. Perhaps more than one stirred something within your heart. Maybe you acknowledge that you have been carrying more than necessary. Or maybe, just maybe, you recognized how far you have already progressed in relinquishing things. Wherever you are, however you are experiencing, permit me to state this: you are not solitary. The truth is, life after 70 is not the culmination of the narrative. It is a fresh chapter, one with fewer diversions, fewer responsibilities, and if you permit it, significantly more lucidity. This is the occasion to inquire of yourself gently. What have I been holding that no longer benefits me? Whose voice am I still heeding, even if it does not reflect my identity? What portions of my past do I need to cease replaying? And what would it feel like to finally grant myself authorization to simply exist? Because that is the authentic boon of aging. The liberty to live life on your terms, the sagacity to select happiness over critique, serenity over strain, profundity over diversion. You no longer have to hasten. You no longer have to substantiate anything. You no longer have to be anyone but the individual you have evolved into, an individual molded by decades of background, affection, heartbreak, mirth, errors, and significance. You have tolerated. You have developed. And now you have merited the prerogative to live with ease, to articulate your truth, and to safeguard your energy fiercely and unreservedly.